So today's topic is about light meter, and this is one of the key things you have to understand to master the manual mode. So no further ado, so let's dive in. So in our previous lessons, we also talked about shutter speed, ISO, and aperture, and these all make the exposure triangle. So these ones are like one of the things to understand. The other part is the light meter. So what you have to understand is that in photography, the exposure usually refers to the amount of light falling to the digital card. So most importantly, the exposure should be correct. So if you look at this one, like the light meter in general, then you usually step on these ones. So if you go a little bit left side, then the photo might get underexposed. And if you go too much to the right side, it's going to be overexposed. So what you want to do here is that you want to be somewhere in the middle here. And definitely don't confuse exposure with shutter speed. This is one of the main things what beginners do when they start out with manual mode. So you have to remember that camera selects a proper exposure based on the lighting conditions which are measured by the camera light meter. So camera light meter is almost like your compass to get for you not to get lost in the whole manual mode jungle in general. So these ones are like, this is just a tool for you to always check. So this is like the exposure photographic triangle, and we will dive deep into the exposure triangle in our another lesson. So definitely check on this one. But this one in general helps you understand that light meter as well. So for correct exposure, what you need is that it have to be different. It can be different for every photographer, and it completely depends on the creative. Like some people like to have a little bit overexposed, and the other people like when it's underexposed. So it completely depends on your style, and the exposure has to be correct, but creatively correct. But in general, I would say if you have raw files, then you lose a lot of information while editing. If you don't have raw files, sorry. If you have only JPGs, then it's like super hard. But in general, while you're photographing, then I would highly, highly recommend you guys to have a little bit correct exposure, because later in Lightroom, like if the photo is completely overexposed or underexposed, then you can't save that much. Obviously, when you have a raw file, then you can do a lot, but in general, I would highly recommend you guys to have it somewhere in the middle, like the exposure. So make sure that your light meter is close to 0, and then you can have a super good quality photo in general. So where you can find the light meter in your camera. So it depends on your camera, but quite often you can find it in the information button while you're on shooting mode, or some cameras have it on top there. So my camera here is Nikon D750, and this one has the top one as well. And you can see like this exposure here is in the middle, and it's like this, but here it's like a little bit underexposed, but not too much. So this one is completely fine when it looks like this. And then another thing where you can find it is that in general you have to look at the plus and minus signs, because sometimes it's like the other way around. So underexposed is on the right side, and overexposed is in the other side. So it completely depends on your camera. So definitely make sure you check on this one, because every camera is a little bit different. But in general, the basics are similar. One is underexposed, other one is overexposed, and then you just play around with your shutter speed or ISO and like the whole photographic triangle. And then how to find the light meter step by step. And again, like this example here is with Nikon D750, but in general, the basics are similar. It might be just a little bit different, but it's completely basic to every camera that you can find easily. So first of all, you have to have your camera on manual mode. So I know if you haven't played around before with manual mode, then this one might be super, super scary, but it's actually easier than you might think. And when you know how to use light meter, then yeah, it's like easy, easy, easy. Like seriously, at first I remember I was like waiting until I got into manual mode forever. But once I understood that I mostly have to check the light meter, then I will be fine. So once I understood this one, I was like, oh, nice, I can shoot manual mode now. So first of all, you can find and press the info button on your camera. It might be a little bit different position, but in general, usually all cameras have some kind of info button. So definitely press on these ones, and then usually you find it on the screen. So here, the light meter is here where you can see the green arrow, and this one is like a little bit underexposed, but not too much. It's somewhere near to the 0, what you really want, and it looks like this. And another option is that you can find the light meter on your second screen if you have it. All cameras don't have it, but some of them have, so definitely check and get to know your camera in general. And then what you can always do is that you look at your viewfinder. So you look inside your camera, and then underneath is the light meter. And this one is like basically when you're shooting, you're just looking inside your camera, playing around with your shutter speed or aperture, and then it changes the light meter in general. And what you want here is that have it somewhere in the middle and you're ready to roll. And then I also forget that most cameras have this one. If you don't have like this kind of second screen, then you usually have it in the viewfinder. So definitely check these ones. And then what you do is that you look through the viewfinder, you focus on the subject, and then you adjust your shutter speed by scrolling the shutter speed button until you get the correct exposure and get it somewhere near the 0 sign, and just scroll the button and you can see what's happening in the viewfinder as well. And then always make sure that your light meter is close to 0, and then you will get pretty correct exposure in general. Thank you for watching. I hope this was all clear and understandable, and in your next photography you will start exploring more light meter and play around with manual mode. So I just can't wait to see your photos there.